the human body, any science that helps to preserve the well-being of humanity will indeed be looked at with great importance. And this is the reason why medicine is considered to be greatly prestigious and a noble, not just medicine, even dentistry and any science that looks after the human body. It relates to the sihha and well-being, afiyah of the human body. And because the human body, the well-being is very important. The well-being of the human body is very important, without which we cannot do anything else in life. We can't even do our acts of worship. We can't even act upon the rules of Islam. We can't even worship Allah in a way we want to if we are ill, physically sick, and we are not in that physical state to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is the reason why this science, any science that helps to preserve the human body and preserves the well-being of the human being is looked upon. It's a very noble science, and this is why Imam al-Shafi'i, one of the great imams of this ummah, and one of his quotes actually I saw on your poster, which somebody actually last week, I was at SOAS University last week on Friday, and somebody said, "You got a talk on Wednesday?" I said, "Yeah," and they said, "There's a really, really good quote on there. Who is?" I said, "I haven't even seen the poster yet." So then I went home, and then on the weekend I looked at the poster, and whoever designed the poster, mashallah, they've got this quote of Imam al-Shafi'i, radiallahu anhu, one of the great imams of this ummah, where he said, "I am not aware of any science more noble than the science, more noble other than ilm al-halal wal-haram, the science that teaches you what's allowed and what's not allowed, what's unlawful and what's lawful in Islam. Other than that, besides that," so that's also noble. To learn about what's lawful and unlawful in a Muslim's life, that's also noble. But other than that, I don't know of any other science that is more noble than the science of tib, ilm al-tib, the science of medicine. And historically, all our great, the Muslims, there were top people within the Muslims who were at the forefront of medicine, at the forefront of research in the field of medicine. And this same Imam al-Shafi'i radiallahu anhu, there's another quote. There's actually two quotes from him. This Imam was a great Imam. You must have heard of Imam al-Shafi'i radiallahu anhu, Muhammad ibn Abu Abdullah, Muhammad ibn Idris al-Shafi'i, who was born in Mecca, and then he went to he was in Gaza, Palestine, and then he went to Mecca, and then he traveled, and he studied in Medina, studied with Imam Malik, another great jurist and a great scholar of this ummah, and then he studied with he went to Iraq, he went to Baghdad, he studied with Imam Muhammad ibn al-Hasan al-Shaybani, who was a student of Imam Abu Hanifa, and then after that he went back, and then latter part of his life, he went to Egypt, and he lived in Egypt, and he passed away there. I visited the area which he used to live in until now in Cairo. That place is called Mahallatu Shafi'i, the area of Imam Shafi'i, and his graves there, he's buried there in Cairo. Now this Imam, another quote from him as well, he says, "Al-ilmu ilman, ilmu al-fiqh lil-adyan wa ilmu al-tibb lil-abdan." This is like a poetry. He was a great poet. He was an eloquent man in the Arabic language, fasih al-lisan. Imam Shafi'i was known for his eloquence in the Arabic language. He was very eloquent, and he composed poetry. There's a whole book called Diwanul Imam al-Shafi'i, the poetry of Imam al-Shafi'i. And in one of his poetry, he says that if poetry wasn't, disrespectful to the scholars, I would have been the greatest poet of the time. But because, if I dedicated myself to poetry, I would neglect my other important duties of teaching and studying hadith and Quran and fiqh, etc., etc. So he says a few lines of poetry, "Al-ilmu ilman, ilmu al-fiqh lil-adyan wa ilmu al-tibb lil-abdan." Science is worth studying are only two. There's only two. One is ilmu al-fiqh lil-adyan, the science of fiqh, which is the science of halal and haram, the science to do with religion, the science of fiqh to do with deen, and the science of tib, the science of medicine for the body, rhymes. And this is what Imam Shafi'i said. And why wouldn't he say this? Because as I said, it's very important. The well-being in the Quran and Sunnah greatly emphasized within Islam. You look at the teachings of Islam, you look in the Quran and you look in the Sunnah, numerous verses, numerous hadiths of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam